A lot of people on YouTube are looking at videos of old buildings and trying to figure out how they built those. Was it from a past civilization? What was Tartaria? But was it a global civilization with technology to harvest electricity from the air? Or was it something else? A more simple people? And in today's video, we will look at some excerpts from a book. It is from the 1600s. This chapter in particular is from Michael the Lithuanian. There was some cross interaction of Lithuania and Eastern Europe with what they called the Tartars that were coming from the east. And I took the Latin text on the right and I translated it using Google Translate. Some of this is going to be translated a little funky, but just keep with it. So here it says, although the Tartars, barbarians, and poor people are held by us, they still boast of the contingencies of life and the contentment of life and the antiquity of their Scythian race, asserting that it is the seed of Abraham and that it has never served anyone or been enslaved by anyone, although it was sometimes harassed by Alexander, Darius, Cyrus, Xerxes, and other more powerful kings and peoples. So the first thing I noticed here is that they assert that they are the seed of Abraham and that they've never served anyone. And I thought that sounds pretty familiar with a verse in the Bible from John 8:33 that says, they answered him, and this is the Jewish Pharisees speaking to Jesus, and they said, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? So it really relates directly to this Michael the Lithuanian describing the Tartarians as claiming to be offspring of Abraham and claiming to never be enslaved or serving under anyone else. Are the Tartarians somehow connected to the Jewish Pharisees? In the next page here it says, but all the Tartar nations, this translation is very mixed up and jumbled because it's Latin, but of all the Tartar nations, the thinnest of them, but they were quick to our countries, Precopenses. They set themselves upon us with our laziness, relying on them, both their proximity and by the convenience of their places of refuge. And then it goes on to describe how they had kind of a strategic place. They could just find refuge with some natural barriers. Like they were hiding behind a swamp, and on one side was a forest, and there was only one gate to get into their territory. And so they could really attack and then retreat into these places. It is said to have had another name, Taurica. Indeed, the inhabitants and government of the Greeks of Trebizond, and the Greeks still retain their language there and their religion. And I looked up the word Trebizond, and it was like a Byzantine Greek region in the 1200s. And it just caught my eye because Greeks, I mean, we're taught that ancient Greek is kind of like the pillars and just kind of like that Hercules kind of stuff, or even just like ancient philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, those kind of Greeks. But there were these Byzantine Greeks where they had a religion that was, I don't know, it's just kind of like this weird mix of like Judaism, Islam, and Christianity kind of duking it out for the being the main religion. Here's a picture of the Hagia Sophia Church, a smaller version of it in this city of Trebizond. It was just 9 years ago converted into a mosque because it's in Turkey. The next page, it translates as, the religion or law is common to the Tartars with the Turks and to other Muslims, which smacks of Judaism, resembles Judaism, and a kind of Nestorian heresy. He professes a single and simple God, but he professes Christ to be a saint and the last judge of the world, born of a pure virgin, but he believes him not to have suffered. And from my own studies, I've noticed that this is pretty much what the Muslims believe today. That Jesus was a prophet, but they don't believe all this other stuff. So this kind of this mix of those three religions And it even says that the Tartars shared those religions or common law with the Turks, the Muslims, and the Jews. Oh, yeah. So I had some commentary before this, but I just thought it was interesting that the Tartars were very fond of horses, and even the prince's horse was not allowed to be yoked to a carriage. There's what they would have looked like or what they would have worn, and then this one is quite militaristic or Russian even. And then there's another picture that it shows up. Again, these are illustrations, but I've seen this commonly portrayed like this. A bow and arrow, and they also they wear the long coats for riding on horses, and they don't really have those carriages tied to them. It's not like the Oregon Trail where they, would pull carriages or horse and buggies. And I noticed that a lot of the Tartarian videos, they like to make fun of the horse and buggy. People with horses and buggies can't build any buildings or build any cranes or move anything. But, at the same time, they like to claim that all these buildings were built by the Tartarians. And if any of these accounts of the Tartarians or Tartars in Eastern Europe or Western Asia are accurate, then they didn't even pull buggies behind their horses. So they were even less prepared to be carrying supplies and building. They probably were more nomadic. In other accounts I've heard they drank horse milk, they ate their horses, and it's just not exactly adding up with some kind of past civilization of, telecommunication or electricity or any of those other technologies. But what do you think? Do you think that these sources match up with a global government kind of society with all this technology connecting us? Or do you think that the Tartarians were more of a loose confederation of races like Scythians who kind of migrated and battled for different areas like the mainstream narrative would describe them as?